Okay. So welcome along to our session on interview skills. Supercharge your interview skills as part of Future Jobs and Opportunities Week. My name is Eilis Spence. I'm Employability Advisor within Ulster University. And this session, half-hour session, is going to be looking all about interview skills. Now, for you guys here today that are in the session, maybe you'll be thinking about upcoming interviews, and some of you maybe have some experience of interviews in the past, whether that was for maybe a placement, maybe it's for a part-time job, or also maybe you have no experience of interviews. For some people, maybe kind of starting to go down the internship, placement, or graduate job path will be their first experience of interviews. And we want you to feel as prepared as you can upon going into an interview so you can perform at your best and hopefully secure those roles. Now, for some of you guys, maybe you haven't gone through the application stage yet. Maybe your interviews might not be happening until later on this semester. Maybe it'll be towards the end of the year so you'll have interview skills. But still, it's important that you understand what will be expected of you when the interview time comes around. So thanks for coming along today. Like I said, if there's any questions at all throughout, please feel comfortable enough that you can pop it in the chat box. And just a couple of things we're going to cover in this session. We're going to be looking at different types of interviews, first of all. We're also going to be looking at preparing for interviews, and in particular, we're going to look at the STAR technique. Some of you might have heard of this before. If not, that's okay. I'm going to tell you all about it. And then we're going to give you just top interviews for interview preparation, what to do on the day before and after as well too. But before I begin, even if you guys that are here at the minute want to tell me a bit about, if I was to say to you, how do you feel if you were to go for an interview? Well, how does the thought of going to an interview make you feel? Is there any kind of things that come to mind straight away? Because I certainly know how I feel if somebody asked me if I had to do an interview. Okay, so there's some answers coming in there. Nervous, awkward, scared. Yeah, scared. Yeah. And that's totally understandable. A lot of people will say the same thing if we were to say an interview's coming up. Definitely, it's an initial thing to kind of tense up a bit and think, oh, this is going to be something that's going to make me nervous. I'm scared to mess up. Somebody's written there as well too. So that's understandable. And we all will have to do interviews at some stage throughout our lives. It might be for that initial job, but for most people, we will travel to different jobs throughout the duration of our careers. And for most of the time, you will have to do an interview for that. And definitely nervous, scared. I've been there. I've done that. I felt that as well too. And that's perfectly natural. So what is it then? What can we do to help us overcome that? How can we think and change our mindset so we're not getting that scared, nervous feeling? We're using that energy and being able to overcome that. So is there anything that you can think of that you'll be able to do to help you overcome that awkwardness or nervousness? Is there anything that just comes to mind straight away that you think would help to kind of overcome that? Research, prepare lots, mock interviews. Yeah, 100%. You're taking the content out of my. This is what I'm going to talk about. You're beating me to it. Yeah, 100%. And that's what I'm going to talk a lot about today in the session. Is about what you can do in order to help you prepare and help you overcome those nerves, to feel confident going forward with an interview, so you're able to show to the interviewer and to the employer that you are the ideal candidate. Because the one thing you want to remember is that once you've got to the interview stage, you've already shown the employer some of those things that they want to see. They can see that you have the potential to be the ideal candidate, and that's why you've got to the interview stage already. So you've lots to be confident about before you even start to do the preparation. So we'll just get started and work our way through the slides. That's great. Thanks, guys. And just some of the slides can maybe kind of change a wee bit in the BB Collaborate here. So just to understand that there might be different types of interviews as well too. So we're going to start with talking about preparation for interviews and some of the things you maybe want to understand before you even go into the interview, or even in advance of going to the interview as well too. So there are different types of interviews that you can do. For some, these will be, for example, panel interview. That's the most common type of interview. And basically what that means is that several people will be sitting on a panel and will take turns asking you questions. the kind that you would see on the likes of The Apprentice, and you know, you always see the kind of on TV and things like that, the kind of interviews. So panel interviews tend to be at least 2 people, maybe sometimes it can be 3 or 4 people. I was in an interview once where it had 6 people. So it can definitely range, but generally speaking, 2 to 3 people is kind of the average for a panel interview. Now, within a panel interview, there might be different things and different types of questions that are asked. So for example, you might get a competency-based interview. And what a competency-based is, it's questions which ask you about specific competencies or skills. So competency is just another word for skills. So they might be looking at something like your teamwork skills. They might be looking at maybe your leadership skills, etc. And the reason that they tend to find that these are quite common, particularly with certain sectors, and particularly for the likes of graduate jobs and placement jobs as well too, because really they're looking for people that don't necessarily have all the experience, but have the core skills that are required for the role. So that's where you tend to see competency-based questions within an interview. We have strengths-based interviews, so these tend to be maybe more biographical or different strengths. A group interview, sometimes this might happen maybe as part of an assessment day or an assessment centre, which you can see as the next one there. More and more common, we are having video interviews, particularly as a result of COVID and everything that kind of goes with that. Video interviews definitely were the norm for basically the whole past year and a half. So what I touched a wee bit about video interviews today, this will probably continue to be the way for many employers, although you might start to see more face-to-face interviews happening again now as well too. We also have telephone interviews. Again, these are just interviews that take place over the telephone. And we also have automated or simulated interviews. And the main difference between these and a video interview is that there's not a person on the other side. So with a video interview, it's a bit like a Zoom call in that there's somebody at the other side, you know, reacting, asking you the questions, having a conversation with you. But with an automated or simulated interview, these are more that you record your answers. And I'm going to touch on them as well too as we move through. So all about the preparation then. What can you do in order to help yourself prepare for an interview? Well, there's some real basics that I would say that you need to do, okay? And the first thing is knowing a bit about the company, okay? So you want to research the company. And there's lots of ways that you can do this. You can do this maybe through, initially, you'd be looking at things like their website, the job ad, their online presence, maybe things like their LinkedIn profile. We've got Twitter written on here, any of their social media channels. See what the company, know what they do, okay? Know what their ethos is. Know what projects they have running, what things are happening, what's in the news about them recently. You know the size of the company, you know, not exact size, but you know, is it a company that has multiple different offices? Do they have different locations? Are they a small, medium business? Are they a local business? Are they a global, international business? Things like this really kind of set the scene for you and kind of put the role itself that you've applied for into context, okay? We've also got written there friends and family. So if you know anybody, if you have any contacts within your network that work for the company, then ask them a bit about that as well too. Use your contacts. News articles, you could be looking up Google and clicking the name of the name of the company and then looking at the news kind of filter within that. But what you're looking for is you want to know the company history, okay? And I don't want an exhaustive list of all the things they've ever done, but know a bit about them. Know a bit about their plans. Are they expanding? You know, do they have new things coming up? And the culture as well. So be able to talk about the company if you're asked about that, because it's a very common question. Then what I think is the most important thing is the job documents, okay? So what I mean by that is revisiting your application. So whether that's your CV or an application form, keep a copy of it. Look at the job advertisement, which will include things like the job description itself and the employee specification, okay? Because these contain lots of vital information for you. And I think one of the later slides goes into this in a bit more detail as well too. But this is such valuable information because any of the information about the job will be based on these documents, okay? And they give real vital clues into the kinds of skills they're looking for, the experience they're looking for, any qualifications they're looking for, and often this will form the kinds of questions that you will be asked in the interview. So these will give you a hint of what questions could be asked. And things to remember when you're preparing for interviews, what is it that you want the employer to know, okay? The employer is probably not going to make any assumptions about you. So remember that anything you want them to know, you have to tell them, okay? Now, you've done this already through part of your application, but you don't necessarily want to be relying on everything that's in your application form. Some of the stuff you want to reiterate through your answers as well too. So what do you want the employer to know? So things like think about your education. So, you know, if you're currently studying your degree, be able to kind of talk about that and talk about what you've learned within that. Even if you're sitting, you're just the beginning of second year and you're thinking head to placements, you know, by the time you come around that, you're lots of different skills and things that you've done within your degree that you'll be able to talk about. Core skills that you have, particularly ones that are relevant to the job. Okay, so if they've asked for a team player, think about how you're going to get across that you're a team player in the interview. Any kind of core personal qualities, what's motivating you for this role, why this employer and why this particular role. You want them to show that you're motivated, that you're passionate about what they do, and that you're a good fit for them as well too. And anything that's unique to you, what is your selling points? Okay, what is it about you that makes you the best candidate? They want somebody who's confident with that as well too. Okay, so think about what questions might come up. Okay, so an interview is made up of questions. All right, so you want to think in advance what typical questions might come up and be able to have your answers prepared. Now, I don't mean to rehearse the questions, so you have to learn off what you want to say, but being able to have the key points, being able to retrieve those key points easily in an interview when asked and put on the spot, because you know you kind of are put on the spot in some ways. So you want to be able to think quickly, and if you've done some preparation beforehand, you should be able to kind of bring that information to the forefront and be able to talk about it confidently. The employee personnel specification and job description will often give you lots of clues about what's being asked. And I know I said that in the last slide, but that's so important, okay? And one possible way to kind of help you do this is to kind of draft kind of possible questions and draft out what makes a good answer. And as I move through the slides here today, I know we're kind of going through this quite quickly, but as I go through it, I'm going to give you, we're going to look at some sample questions, but we're also going to look at some of our tools where you can look at good questions and what makes a good answer as well too. So I'm going to tell you a tool that we have that will help you do that yourself. And then I've kind of got some sample questions here. Now, obviously, I mean, I have here, what about 8 questions, 9 questions? These are just some samples, okay, of typical common questions, but this is by no means an exhaustive list, okay? So if you're preparing for the interview, you would be preparing beyond this, okay? But I'm just going to give you a flavour of types of different questions. And this first one here, tell me about yourself. And the third one is, how do your qualifications and experience meet the requirements for this post? I mean, sometimes that will be the one question. And from my own personal experience, that is a question that is asked time and time again. And for any interview they're going for, regardless of what you guys are studying, because I know there's a wide range of subjects here today, students studying different subjects, no matter what kind of role you're going for, you need to be able to go into an interview and be able to articulate a really good answer for this, okay? And think about what they're asking. They're asking for your qualifications. They're asking about you yourself. They're asking about what experience. So that's how you want to structure your answer, okay? You want to include your qualifications. You want to include a bit about any experience that you have. Now, the experience might not be work experience. It could be experience, for example, of maybe there's technical skills that you've used within your degree. Maybe you have done practical things within your degree, and that's the experience that you're going to talk about. And also think about the skills as well too. That's a good way to think about that. And for some of you guys, maybe you've heard of something like an elevator pitch before. So if you're talking about an elevator pitch, what we mean there is being able to talk about yourself. So again, I think I always talk about The Apprentice and things like this. If you were to go into a lift or an elevator, as they say in America, and you were with the CEO of a company and you wanted to sell yourself to them, by the time it took you got on the lift with him and you got, or her, and got to the top floor, would you be able to kind of sell yourself? And that's what an elevator pitch is, okay? So it's being able to kind of talk about yourself positively and sell your skills to somebody within that. And that's kind of a really good way to think about that within those answers. And some of you might have done the elevator pitches in your course as well too. Why did you apply for this position, or why did you apply? Why this particular company? So there again, the research about the company is coming into that. What's your strengths and weaknesses? Okay, so we all have strengths, we all have weaknesses. Again, that's a kind of common question. Weaknesses, we don't want you to say like, oh, actually, I'm really bad timekeeper. Now, some of us might be not the best timekeeper, but what you want to do there is want to turn it into a positive, okay? And there's lots of examples of this online, so you can look it up. But you want to take kind of weakness and show, actually, in the past, I found that I maybe wasn't as good at timekeeping, and then tell them how you overcame it. What did you do to overcome that? So you're turning a weakness into a positive, okay? Now, these next three here, provide an example, give us an example, describe a situation, the three here, these would fall under the competency-based questions. So if you remember at the start, I talked about competency-based interviews, and I'm going to show you the technique, the STAR technique, to help you answer these kind of questions. And basically what these are is these kind of questions aren't looking for you to talk about a skill in general. What they're looking for is a specific example of a time when you've shown that particular competency or skill, okay? So you need to be able to draw upon a really good, strong example in order to answer the question they've asked you. So the questions we have here is provide an example of a time when you demonstrated attention to detail, okay? The next question, give us an example of when you had to prioritize and really manage your time well. And the next one, describe a situation when you had to work in a team and get a job or task done. So there's three examples of competency-based questions. And you can see from the way that they're worded is they're asking you for a specific time. So it's quite difficult in an interview situation, especially if you have those if you are nervous, you are a bit scared, to be able to draw upon examples really, really quickly. So with this technique, I'm going to show you just in a few slides time. Hopefully that will help you with your preparation for this kind of interview. And like I said, these are really common for placements, for graduate jobs, these kinds of questions, because again, they are for people who want to show that they have the core skills and maybe haven't had the chance yet to actually gain experience within the sector yet. And this is for a lot of people, their first chance within their kind of chosen sector to get experience. So that's why they ask those kinds of questions. So bear with me, I'm going to tell you a bit more about how to answer those and then the next slide. Then some other questions are on here. What important trends do you see in the business or the sector over the next 5 years? So again, that's your commercial awareness. So knowing a bit about your what it is that is going to be happening next 5 years. Are you kind of switched on to that? Do you understand your sector and kind of changes that might be coming? Why do you think we should choose you for this placement position? Again, it's being able to talk about yourself, okay? So there's just a bit of a selection of the kinds of interview questions. I mean, some of them will be just kind of biographical, tell us about yourself. Some of them will be about the company, some of them will be about the position, some of them will be about key skills. It is impossible to predict the exact question they're going to ask you unless you know an insider. That's a joke. It's impossible to know the exact question they're going to ask you. Okay, so nobody's going to go into an interview and know what questions are going to be asked. So there is going to be an element of thinking on your feet. Okay, but if you use the job ad, use the job description, use the person specification, there'll be clues in that. Okay, so things like, if they're looking for somebody who is able to show innovation, then the chances are they might ask you about a time in the past where you have had to create something or show an innovation or you've changed something. Again, if they've asked for somebody who's a team player, maybe have some examples of when you've worked effectively as part of a team. Now, these examples don't have to be from a work setting. They can be from university. If maybe you do volunteering, it could be from that. If you are part of a society, if you're part of a sports team, if you have extra hobbies, and you can think of examples like that. Maybe you have care and responsibilities at home. There's lots and lots of different skills that can be demonstrated through all those. And that's a really great thing about competency-based questions as well too. So when you're answering a competency-based question, this is the approach that we would encourage you to use. Okay, so it's called the STAR technique, and STAR is just basically an acronym, and it stands for situation, task, action, and result. Okay, and you can see from the visual I have up here, we also have prepare as part of that as well too. That goes for any interview question. Okay, so what it says below is listen carefully to the question and think of an event. Take a few seconds to ensure you have the best example you can. Don't rush it. Okay, and that goes for any interview question. Listen to what it is they're asking you. Form your answer in your head. Decide what it is that you're going to say in your head before you start talking, and take that wee bit of time. Okay, take that bit of time and it's okay. What might seem like a really long silence in an interview is probably only about 10 seconds. It's probably only about 10, 15 seconds. So take that wee bit of time. And I guarantee the interviewer would prefer if you took that time and gave a good, structured, well-structured answer that was fully thought out, than just rushing into your answer and then trailing off halfway through. You're not being too sure where you're going with the answer and maybe not answering it fully. Okay, so for any question, always take a moment and just to prepare what it is that you're actually going to say. For a competency-based question, then we've got the STAR technique. So we've got the situation, the task, the action, and the result. So again, like I said, this is just a way to structure your answer. So if you think about the last competency-based questions, what they were asking was, tell us about a time when, or give us an example. So in your example, you want to think about what was the situation. You want to describe a specific event or situation that you run, okay? Then after that, you want to think about what was the task that you had to do, okay? So sometimes this part of it might be quite short, okay? It's just really setting the scene and put it in context for the employer, okay? So explain the task you had to complete, highlight any specific challenges or constraints. For example, did you have any deadlines, issues, costs, etc.? Then the next one is A, so that's action. And with this is nearly like the bulk of your answer. So think about it step by step, what you did, and kind of make sure you have sufficient detail. And what you're talking about here is describing the specific actions that you took to complete the task. So they should highlight desirable traits that the interviewer, is looking for. Okay, so taking it through step by step. And again, it's you don't want the employer to make any assumptions. So even if it feels like it's kind of like, well, that's obvious that I did that. It's not necessarily obvious you did that. It might be to you, but taking through your kind of motivations and your reasoning for each action as well too. And then finally, result. So close with basically the result of your efforts. What was the outcome and how did the kind of situation kind of conclude itself, okay? You can include figures if you want to quantify it, if you can, so for example, if you, there's certain things, if you've got a high mark, for example, or if your example was talking about maybe increase in sales, did you have an increase in sales? What was that, what the outcome was? And sometimes you might see that this is called reflection rather than result. We don't always get a positive result from things, sometimes it's trial and error. Sometimes, we'll try things and we'll do them the best we can, but it doesn't always have the most optimal result. So reflection, if there were some things that you could change if you were to do it again, it shows that you've learned from it. So that's okay to do it from that perspective as well too. So sometimes you might see as an opportunity for reflection in this STAR as well too. So here we have an example of the STAR interview method in a real life question. Okay, so I'll just read through this one and hopefully it will put it into context if you see an example of what I mean. And there's loads of examples you can look up online of this as well too. And again, I'm going to show you a tool just after this in the last couple of minutes where you can practice some of this as well too. So Noel is interviewing for a finance internship at Barclays. In the interview, a question is put to him. So Noel, describe a situation in which you led a team. So the situation was, I was working at WH Smith's as a sales assistant when we rebranded the store for National Book Week. The task was, so footfall in the store was very high during National Book Week. My job was to ensure the rebrand was completed on time and the staff maintained a high level of customer service as footfall increased. Okay, so the employer is under no illusion here. They know exactly what was the situation was and what the task was. So Noel's action was to support his manager with the rebrand. He had regular meetings, stayed in contact with the supplier to ensure that the cardboard cutouts of the characters arrived. I managed my time effectively so I could oversee the rebrand and continue with all my shop floor duties at the same time. And the result was that the National Book Week campaign was a great success. Feedback from the rebrand was widely positive and customers were particularly excited about the cardboard cutout of Ron. There was 60% sales increase year on year for that week and I was rewarded for Employee of the Month for my troubles. So Noel is a great guy altogether. But you can see all very positive language and all kind of talking about his achievements. And not just that, he's talking about how he did it and what his method was and how he came to that kind of really strong result as well too. So when you're looking at the job description, you might want to think initially, can you think of any potential interview questions? So you might want to think about what technical skills or qualifications have they asked for, and how do you fit into that? And like I said at the beginning, you've already got to the interview stage, so you probably have answered some of this already. And again, it might be about reiterating this and through your answers. What transferable skills or competencies were mentioned? Okay, so what potential questions might come up in an interview, and how might they assess these transferable skills or competencies in interviews, and how would they frame the questions? Okay, so sometimes you might think, oh, they're looking for teamwork. That doesn't necessarily mean they're going to say, tell us about a time when you showed good teamwork. They might ask questions like, have you ever come across conflict in a team, and how did you manage it? Okay, so think about it from maybe different perspectives and how it might be asked as well too, because it's not always the most obvious one. And remember, you'll have the opportunity to ask questions to the interviewer at the end as well too. And I would say with this, always have a couple of questions planned. They might inadvertently answer some of your questions as you kind of maybe are having a conversation or moving through the interview. So make sure you have a couple planned, but you might want to consider things like the organisation itself. So what kind of future developments are in the pipeline? Work and training, what projects would you be involved in? What's a typical day look like, for example? Colleagues, how many people would be in my team? Who would I be working with? Prospects, what career paths of other placement or graduate students taken in the organisation? So, you know, as there are opportunities for development and growth, and time, and how long have you wait before you hear from them? Sometimes, again, like those kind of things, maybe tell you it as you go through it. So a few top tips: find out as much as you can about the type of interview, review your application, familiarise yourself with the role, and look at what the employer is asking in the job description. Think about your strengths and suitability for the role, and research and familiarise yourself with the company. Make sure you research the sector and industry as a whole as well too. And if you're going to an actual what's the word, live interview, face-to-face interview, that's what I mean, plan your journey. Give yourself plenty of time to get there. Know where you're going. Is there parking outside it? Do you have to get public transport? When is the buses? Dress appropriately. Make sure you dress smartly for an interview, okay? On the day, we want you to show confidence, okay? Consider your body language. So things like good eye contact, smiling. Think about maybe if you're nervous, try to avoid things like your legs shaking, and you know, sometimes you get a dry mouth and that. Take a sip of water if that's what you need to. Listen to the questions and think before you answer, okay? And when you're answering, think about your relevant evidence, any outcomes and things like that. You know, back up your things rather than just saying, oh, I'm a good team player. How have you showed it before? Be enthusiastic, speak clearly, and at an appropriate pace. And it says me who's picked the pace here because I looked at the time. But speak clearly and at an appropriate pace, okay? Make sure the person can understand what you're saying. You're not kind of spitting over your words a wee bit and you know, muddling up a wee bit. Take your time, and if you need to, ask for clarification. If you need them to repeat the question, that's fine, just ask them. Sometimes the questions might be in kind of two parts, so you might answer the first part and just say, can you just repeat the second part of that question? I want to make sure I'm answering it fully. That's completely fine. And don't assume the employer will memorize things from your applications. On the day itself, remember to show an interest in the role and the company itself. It's okay to be nervous, so try your best to relax and be confident. Make sure the employer understands your career goals, and you'll have opportunities to ask questions, so make sure you're prepared. And finish off the interview by thanking the employer for their time. For an online interview, so make sure you know if it's live or pre-recorded. So I talked about those simulated ones before. Choose a suitable location, somewhere that's quiet, okay? Somewhere there's no distractions. Again, make sure you dress appropriately, especially if your camera and stuff's going to be on, which I imagine it would be. Use positive body language. So again, try to look at the camera, you know, kind of simulate kind of a face-to-face interview where you're trying to make eye contact, etc. Test your technology. So if you are doing it via Zoom, make sure Zoom's downloaded, or if it's Microsoft Teams, make sure it's downloaded, or they might have their own tech they used. Think about things like your microphone, your video, control the controllables, so things that you can control. Try to have that done, just have less stress on the day itself. Have a nice clean desktop as well too. So really quickly, I just want to show you where we have an online simulator as well too. So this will only take 2 minutes here, guys. So I'll just show you really quickly this great tool. So like I said at the beginning, some of you might have interviews coming up, but it might be kind of a few weeks or months before you have that. And you probably want to do a bit of a practice mock interview. That was one of the things that somebody said, Emily said in the chat box. Mock interview is a great way to prepare, and you're totally right, it completely is. Doing a mock interview helps you not only kind of go through the preparation, but actually the idea of saying the answers out loud, I think, is so much more effective than actually just rehearsing them in your head. So if you go onto our website, which is ulster.ac.uk/employability, this is what it looks like, something similar to this, okay? And then you can see here, they just clicked on the tools part here. So within tools, we have lots of tools, including Handshake, VMock, etc. And what I want you to do is, once you go to Ab Integro, within Ab Integro, there's a suite of different things, but one of the things is the Interview 360 tool. And what this does is a simulated interview. And there's also lots of video content on it, and there's interview questions as well too. In order to do a mock interview, you just click on the mock interview. And then you can click either on an auto-generated one, or if you scroll down, then you'll see there's some subject-specific ones. There's also competency-based ones. I think there's a strength-based one. So there's a few general ones as well too. So choose which one suits you. And then it'll check. So it'll tell you a bit about the interview, how long it's going to be, how many questions, etc. And then you can start the interview. And then the question will just appear on the screen. So there's no person at the end of it. Nobody's going to watch this afterwards. You know, it's not for me or any of the other employability advisors to go on and look at. But there you go. You've got some thinking time. So you've got 10 seconds to prepare your answer. So this particular question is, why do you want to work for us and not one of our competitors? And then once the thinking time's over, you record your answer. And then it'll go through the next question and the next question. And then it tells you then a bit about that. If you go on through then, you can also browse the interview questions. And if you click on the interview questions, not only does it give you that, but it tells you what kinds of things you need to answer would make an effective answer as well too. So you can do, if you don't want to do the mock interview, you can just browse the questions. And one of the new things, sorry, this is a rubbish, this is not a very good screen grab, but one of the things that they've incorporated now into the new version of Ab Integro Interview 360 is there's some AI features in it. So you can see here, it looks at different things like your body language, your communication and speech, your camera position, the video quality. So things like perceived emotions, eye movement, smile frequency, speech clarity and things like that. Fuller words, that's a really good one too. So it tells you kind of green, amber and red for that as well too. Like I said, there's 150 central and customized interview questions. And yeah, that was that. So that's that one, okay. Okay, I'm just going to finish up, guys. I know we've kind of gone over the wee minute here. Just to remind you that there's lots of things happening over the next couple of days. In particular, we've got the skills boosting program, which you obviously know about because you're at some of this, but there's more things going to be happening over a couple of days. Our graduate recruitment fair is on Tuesday, and there's some of the employers that are attending. So for anybody who's in final year or a graduate, make sure you've signed up and schedule your sessions. That's the most important thing. Do that now in advance where you can, okay? And then on Wednesday and Thursday, we also have lots and lots of placement and internship recruiters that are going to be there for placement and internships. So definitely same thing if you're in second year or if you're in first year and you want to get some work experience, definitely check out and make sure that you schedule your sessions as well too. So if you haven't registered yet, you can go on to Handshake, and that's where all our opportunities are. You can register for the fair and set up your schedule. If you go onto our YouTube channel, Careers at Ulster, I've got a whole webinar on that as well too, if you're not too sure about that. But thank you guys. Sorry, I went a bit quick there at the end, but thank you very much. I'm just going to stop recording.